Okay, guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we have David Airey with us. Most businesses spend thousands on logos and branding and wonder why nobody remembers them. And our guest today figured out why and wrote the book literally on it. So David Airey is a very great graphic designer, as you all know. He's been working with clients more than I think 10, 20 plus from countries. His blogs and logo design love and identity design get millions of visitors every year. He's authored 4 books, including Logo Design Love, and that's got translated into multiple languages. That was amazing. Let's welcome David Airey to the stage. Hi, David. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, Anas. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be talking with you today.
Awesome. So how's your work and how's everything with you in terms of all the chaos in the world right now is happening?
Well, I try to keep things as local as possible in terms of my outlook in the world, because as you say, you can get swallowed up into the negativity quite easy, so I don't tend to watch much of the news, and I focus on the work and my family, and things are great. Thank you. I never take on any more than 3 clients at once, so the process tends to run quite smoothly. There's not a lot of stress involved purposely, because like you said, I've been doing this for quite a while now, a little more than 20 years. It was 2005 when I started my business, and since then, I've been focusing on the logo side of things, because it's the part of the design, the visual identity that I enjoy creating the most. Mm-hmm. And work's going very well. Family life is good too. So I have very little to complain about, thankfully. I know I'm fortunate to say that, but thank you for asking. It's great. How about with you?
Yeah, it's going great as well. Where I am right now, it's a hot region. We are just beside Iran, but it's just things are going a little bit slow, and the inflation is getting increasing every day, getting expensive, especially oil. So petrol price is going skyrocket. So it's just a lot to take in for our people who are just earning here locally and doing business locally, because here there are problems when any disruption happens. The currency gets low, and you have to earn in those currency like dollars or pounds or sterling pound. So that's, you can keep up with inflation, but if you're earning local currency, it does impact a lot here, obviously, for the all the chaos happening in the world right now. But thanks for asking.
We see that too. The inflation here, mm-hmm. Our bills go up year on year, and so it can be a struggle. I completely understand that. And so one of the reasons why I wrote the books was to share what I do, mm-hmm. and hopefully people can learn from the mistakes that I've made over the years, because I have made quite a few. So that was one of the reasons behind the books, was to kind of build my authority a little bit, but also to share what I've learned over the years, because I get emails now and again from people who they come across what I do, and they send me nice compliments, and that means a lot to me. So it's a little way to give back, while at the same time establishing myself in the eyes of potential clients as someone who's trustworthy to work with. Mm-hmm. So if anyone out there who is thinking about writing a design book and they haven't already, it can definitely elevate you in terms of client perception.
Yeah. So how did you get to write your first book? Like, what's the process, and which book is the first? Because I don't know that. And how did you get into the mind, like, okay, so I have to write the book on this topic? Because I have been in the field for almost a decade or more, but still I haven't, this thought didn't came across to me to write a book, because I still think I cannot write a book on something.
I think we all have a book in us, at least one. I was contacted out of the blue by a publisher in the States. Well, a step before that, I started a logo blog, logodesignlove.com, and after about a year of publishing articles, I got an email out of the blue from a publisher, a senior acquisitions editor at the publisher. Her name was Nikki MacDonald, and as a result of that, then that's how I started working on my first book. Was just Nikki asking me, "Would you be interested in writing a logo book with us?" And it came as a result of my logo specific website. So she saw that I was writing about them, and she saw that I had an interest there, and she thought it would be a good fit. So we negotiated a contract, and I spent about 9 months then working on that. The publisher would set out a set of deadlines for the deliverables. So it was split into 25%, 50%, 75%, so I'd have these deadlines to work towards, and I'd be assigned an editor. So this is one of the advantages of working with a traditional publisher rather than self-publishing, is that they give you a copy editor, a proofreader, an indexer. They handle the printing, the shipping, the sales. You won't earn as much of a percentage. If you were to self-publish, you would earn a much greater percentage on each sale, but you might not get the same reach. And I definitely wouldn't have got the translations into other languages. So there are pros and cons to working with a traditional publisher when you compare it to self-publishing. But I'm very glad that I got that opportunity, and that was on the back of my logo-specific website.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like my brother. I remember my brother works with clients who helps clients to self-publish their books on Amazon with Amazon. So, but still, the traditional way, the way you tell, because it helps you if you are new into book writing or something. It really helps you because you get all the help from copywriting and editors and proofreaders to help you out in that scenario. But if you are just writing your first book and trying to self-publish, it's hard for you, and you have to hire all the people, and then you don't know how good they are, and there is you have to do marketing on all yourself. So it's a cost. Even if they are you are getting the most of the percentage, but it's a big cost that you have to first involve. So I guess the first book, maybe you should not self-publish, but go to the traditional publisher. That would help you understand more how the book market and all the things works, and then maybe you can later on self-publish. Do you agree with that?
In my case, I do agree with that, because one of the major learning points from my first book was how bad I was at writing. I would send off the Word documents to my copy editor, and they would come back torn to shreds in many places. So my copy editor was a massive help. And as I progressed from one book to the next, then my writing would improve and the edits would reduce. And I wasn't assigned a copy editor with my second publisher. My first publisher was Peach Pit Press, which is a subdivision of Pearson Education. And my second publisher was Rockport. They reached out because they had seen that my first two books were selling, and they just wondered if I would write a book with them. So I wasn't. So it depends on your publisher who they assign to help. Some publishers will just expect you to do everything, and then they'll handle the sales and the shipping. Other publishers, like my first one, they assigned that copy editor, and the proofreader was a great help, and the indexer as well, just to pick out the main words from throughout the copy and assign them into a list that I then entered into my design template. So yes, I would recommend using a traditional publisher, and yeah, it worked well.
All right. So let's set a tone for our conversation. Like, most of the people would ask you similar questions, but I was thinking maybe I should ask you some questions, maybe from the business side or from the side as an entrepreneur, or things that you have to handle alone if you are, for example, if I have to do it again, what do you do now in this stage of whatever going on in the world. This is fast world we are living in, rather than we 10-15 years ago. It was very slow, and comparatively it's just slow. It was slow. Right now it's everything is fast. Everyone wants fast things. Even if my clients come to me and they want things in a week, and I'm like, it cannot be possible to create a brand in a week. It doesn't make sense. But people are looking into that kind of stuff. So what the advice from you to the people who are starting just out there, service business, maybe creative design studios, and they want to expand or scale their level? So how would they start? What are the tips and maybe or hacks or don'ts of the business? Should how do they survive in this world?
Well, there's a lot of competition in the design profession. So one of the main things to do is to set yourself apart with some form of self-initiated project, a side project, whether that's, well, in my case, it was that logo design of website. What that meant was that more designers, when they saw an article that they enjoyed, they would link to that, and that would boost my search engine rankings, and then that would help me be found by clients. And also clients would be searching for articles on logo design. So regardless of what you want to design, if you create content around that, then the better the content, the more likely it is that a potential client is going to see that. So had it not been for the blogs that I set up, I don't know if I would still be in business, because that was a client acquisition tool almost. Not necessarily everyone that contacted me, we worked together. I would say about 25%, maybe 20% of the inquiries I get would go on to become clients. A lot of the people that would contact me wouldn't be able to afford what I would generally charge. But there are other ways around that. It's not always about a fee. You can trade services. If there's something that your client has that is good for your business or you find useful, it doesn't necessarily need to be a financial transaction. There can be a service trade there too. That probably applies more if your client is local. If you think of a tradesperson, for example, or a restaurant, or any kind of service trade, or a product that you might like, and the potential client is selling that. So that was the key for me, was creating that content that was related to what I wanted to sell.
All right.
And editing that content as well. So once it's online, the benefit there, as opposed to a book, is that you can change it, so you can update it over the years, just like you would your portfolio.
Most probably, clients do, or when they create their brand or try to create their logo, there must be some kind of common mistakes that they do. And what are those mistakes that you find that these are the things that everybody, it's a trait of business owners that they do this kind of mistakes, and you want them to know that these are the mistakes, and don't do these specific basic rookie mistakes, and that will save your brand or something like that?
I'm not sure. Can you give an example of a mistake? Are you talking about a mistake in their visual identity, or a mistake in their overall brand?
Yeah, regardless of what they ask you something. Like, for example, this case, the story I shared with you, like they came to me, and this is the mistake in their decision, that they don't think it through, that brand is attached to the marketing and how they present themselves on the market. And I see these mistakes whenever someone come to me, and this is the most common mistake that I see. People come to me when they want to redesign. They do this, they don't have any clarity that what they want and why they are doing this. That's a mistake that I found, like, with almost every client when they are going to request me to redesign their brand or logo. So that's kind of mistake that they come up with. And
sure. Well, kind of on the flip side of that, I'll have people that will come to me and they'll have quite a definite idea of the design that they want to see. So rather than hiring me as a designer, they'll be hiring me because I know how to digitize the design that they've already come up with. And in that case, I would decline because it would be a waste of their money. You know, they could find someone who could do that work for much less than I would do. I'm hired for my ideas. So if a client or a potential client approaches me and says, can you help with our logo? This is what we'd like it to look like. And there's not much scope for me to experiment there. You know, I could potentially say to them, well, I can do this, but have you thought about anything else? You know, would you like to see more than one idea? But there'll be a few times I can think of when I've declined projects because they send me a sketch. Perhaps they'll send me an email with a sketch and can you help me digitize this almost? That's not the kind of work that I enjoy. You know, I enjoy coming up with the ideas. If it's just a case of recreating something that already exists, then it's much less enjoyable. And the client can save themselves money by getting somebody else to do that. And I understand that from the client viewpoint, because design's fun. You know, it's a great job to be in. And often when I'm working through a project and I'll share ideas with the client, they'll come back to me with some sketches of their own, but then it's a case of me kind of guiding them to say, I'm the expert on, no, that doesn't sound quite right, but guiding them in a way that shows them that the ideas that I come up with are stronger for their business than what they're thinking. There's always a back and forth there. And I've had clients that share ideas with me that are better than what I've initially presented. So it's not that everything that I do is right and everything the client does is wrong. But if I go back to my original point, if a client says, can you digitize this for us, or can you help us with our logo, this is what we want it to be, then I would decline.
Yeah. But that's a good approach, actually. Because yes, sometimes clients' ideas are good, but they don't know how to frame it. And they help you out that this is what they're looking something. Or maybe they tell you the backstory of their brand or something that makes you even understand what they're thinking, what their story is, and then you can come up with creative things. But when clients come with their own sketch, it's less fun to make something.
Yeah, definitely. And another point there is that one thing that clients will always, not always, but they'll often say is, oh, this reminds me of this. And they'll think of that as a negative. But when you consider the amount of logos that there are in existence and how difficult it is trademarking something that's minimal, then what we create is always going to look like something else. So you have to kind of steer your client away from these associations with other brands, because what's most important is that it's distinctive in their marketplace. When minimalism or when a simple design is a goal, then there's always going to be something that looks similar. You can't get away from that. Yes, so that's when I would refer my clients to their competitors. Compare this to your competitors, because there's a similar logo to anything you can create.
That's right. So it's just my hot take on things. Like most, again, getting back to the rebrand, but most rebrands are just expensive distractions. Company rebrand when they don't know how to fix their actual problems. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but when it just like I said, I don't know that usually people don't know that what's their actual problem is, and they just go to the rebranding side. And this happens, I think, here a lot in this South Asian regions, like Pakistan, India. I've seen clients with no strategy coming up. I have worked with I've spent most of the career working with US clients, because that's what I've started from. But they have a little bit of usually know what they're doing, but the ones that don't have the knowledge of tech and how digital business work, they don't have any idea what to do with the rebrand and why to do and when to do. So what do you think about this idea? Like, can you build a strong brand without knowing your own identity first, or you can do it?
No, the client needs to be pretty sure about who they are, what they do, who their customer is, and what they want to achieve over the next 5-10 years. If they're unable to answer the straightforward questions, then I don't have any basis from which to start researching, because it's always a conversation with the client. That's where it starts. Just asking the client as many questions as possible about their business in the time that we have, and then picking out those little keywords, those little brand nouns that can be visually translated into symbolism. So it all starts with the conversation, and if the client isn't fully aligned with their brand, if they don't appreciate, or not appreciate, if they don't know what they're doing, then I can't help. Yeah. So a client comes to me whenever they're well aware of their business. I know what you mean about the major organizations that change their logo might do. They think, okay, I'm coming in here, I want to stamp my authority on this. And the first thing they might think of is, we need to change our logo. But that's more an ego thing.
Yeah.
There can be valid reasons for a rebrand, or a redesign if a company is changing direction, or if they're launching new products. But yeah, I understand that ego thing.
Yeah.
With new leadership.
Yeah, this happens a lot, and it happens very recently to me. And in a company that I was working, this C-level changed, and the other C-level person came, and he told me that he don't like the color of this company's brand, and I was like, what do I do with that? This brand exists like for 15 years, and it has. It's a brand, and that's working in US, and everybody knows their color right now. Even if we change the color a little bit, you have to market it something like you are rebranding a lot of things, because color change is a big change. Because whenever we put their stalls on the big conference, people just see the color. Okay, this color is for this company. You just visually understand. It's just like McDonald's or KFC. You just see the color and understand, oh, this is this brand. Now it's a common brand over there. So why would you change the color of this instantly, rather than just making the strategy? So, and still, I left that job, and they were still playing around with the website with different colors, and I'm like, thank God I'm not a part of this. But it happens a lot, and it happens in reality. And I'm talking about the big US company. So it happens.
Yes. I try. One of the mistakes that I made in the past was I would ask after a presentation, what do you think? Do you like it? Mm-hmm. But questions like that, they're often answered in a very personal way, whether the client themselves, they like it, but they need to look at it from the outside perspective. Is this right for the business? Is this going to appeal to the people that I'm targeting? Mm-hmm. So personal preferences in terms of color, you need to provide a clear rationale for your design decisions. It's this color because of this, or it's this shape because it targets this viewpoint. So whether that's stability or something adventurous, you have to try and take your clients' individual preferences out of it, and always look at what they're trying to grow and who they're trying to attract.
All right. Now, there are a big part we cannot, ignore. The big elephant in the room is the artificial intelligence. And that has disrupted the market a lot. And people think, now you can generate logo with this AI and this and that. And I'm like, okay, that's great. If you are a small business owner, then go ahead. If you are starting very small, go ahead, design your logo with AI. We don't care about that, because you're just starting out, and you just have to have something. But when you create your value and create your audience, you might need to be, redesigned at that point. But yeah, that's going to make, I think there are a lot of designers, gigs and jobs maybe gets very reduced, but at the same time it gets more valuable, because designers would be more praised on working on by their hand and their skill, not just using AI or other stuff. So what do you think, what does it make more valuable, and how does it this shift do you see in the world right now, and how does it affecting small businesses and large corporations?
It goes back to a point that you made earlier about relationships. It makes the human relationship more valuable. We don't want to be working with machines.
Yeah.
There's a human connection there. There's an energy between two people that you can't recreate whenever you're prompting some kind of bot. So the more personal and the more of a human touch that you can put into your work, then it's going to really set you apart. Because if more and more people start using AI, then it's putting a lot more work in the world that is more impersonal, and there's not the level of craft involved. Designers, we don't want to be typing for our job. No, we want to be sketching. We want to be using our hands. We want to be putting some paper on a rock and rubbing the pencil on top of it to create some kind of pattern that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So that reminds me of a project that I saw recently. It was an identity for a farmer in England, and the designer went there and they took a lot of rubbings from tractor tires and various tools and walls and things that were around the property. And then they integrated that, they digitized those, and it just made it a lot more personal and a lot more human. And people are prepared to pay for work that has that level of care and attention. There will be a lot of potential clients who will say, well, let me try this myself. They're not the client for me. I'll just continue to do my job while people are prepared to hire me. And who knows how long that will take me into the future. But I don't try to look too far, because if you look too far ahead, it's generally just a cause for stress and anxiety. So I always bring it back to the project that I'm working on now. Do my best on that and try to delight my client, and then share that work. If it leads to more work, brilliant. That's what I love. So I keep things as focused on the present as I can, because I who knows what the future may hold. I think I might have missed a question or two that you posed there. Does that answer it, or did I miss something?
No, that's fine. No, you answered it. It was just, I was thinking, like, do you personally use AI in your current workflow? Not in terms of designing, like in terms of like researching or processing or something. Do you get help from it?
I have used it for research purposes. I would never take what it gives me as a given. I wouldn't fully trust it, because you're on one of these websites and it says, this might not be right. But it can help speed things up, and it can help me structure my thoughts in a way that is not necessarily as good as how I might put it in an email, for example. If I type out an email to a client, I'm typing out my thoughts, everything that I want to say, but I know that it can be said in a better way. Then I'll run that past Claude or ChatGPT or something, and it might restructure my words or just polish it a little bit. So I'll do that from time to time. And I've used Nano Banana Pro to help with some mock-ups. If I have a symbol design and I want to let my client know that this can be used on an almost infinite variety of relevant surfaces and in their different contexts, then yeah, it can help with mock-ups. That's all I can think of at the minute, is for research purposes, helping me organize my thoughts and crafting some mock-ups for a client. But when it comes to creating the logo, that will always be a result of me. I'll first do the research. I'll then put a strategy in place with the client, which is essentially having a plan before the design work takes place, so we don't waste time designing something that isn't right, that hasn't got consensus already from the client, and then implementation. So those are the 4 stages that I generally design with, or I run through on a project: research, strategy, design, implementation. And when it comes to the design, it's the sketching that I love, putting out as many ideas on paper as possible to discard the vast majority and then focusing on what's right, and then putting that into Illustrator and tweaking the little anchor points and choosing the right type and customizing that myself. I don't want to be passing over the work that I most enjoy. It seems like a backwards way of doing things for a designer. You're kind of ruling yourself out of future work. So I think we see a lot of designs online now that people are using to promote themselves, and they use AI to create it all. But I don't think that's not somebody who wants to design for the love of the craft. That's somebody who wants to make money. And I never really got in it for the money. First of all, I started in design because it's what I really enjoyed doing. So there's a difference there between a designer who's in it just for the money and a designer who's in it because they love doing what they do. Mm-hmm. And I think those that love what they do, they'll put their personality into it, and they'll always have that human approach that clients will be willing to pay more for. There's definitely a balance there between what you can get AI to help with and what you should, from my perspective.
Yeah, that's great. I use personally as just like you say, and you can treat it as an assistant. Like, it just helps you out in the stuff that's, the admin work. There is the clutter, like, that takes your time, and it makes you focus on what you do really. And like, for example, writing an email, or maybe setting up some presentations, text or copy that you want to make sure that it's right. And you don't have to put so much effort in just small things, and then you distracted by those things, but rather than working on your whatever project you're working. So that's very, very well, I agree with that. And I personally call it as a design partner, because recently I converted, I switched from brand design to user experience design, just because I love digital screens and I love to create experiences. So that experience in the brand design and logo design really helped me out in understanding overall because customers are obviously, they are the users of the applications. So there is a journey just that's involved in the digital world, the SaaS world. But at the same time, for example, these days everybody's like, every tools come in and everybody's like, okay, this tool can kill designer's job. And I'm like, how is this possible that nobody can kill the job of a designer like that? Yeah, many jobs are affected. Many things are affected by and disrupted by artificial intelligence. For example, customer support. That's something I have created the automation for this, for customer support that replies people, and at a time 20 people, and human cannot do that. But that still involves one supervisor person that takes, whenever it requires, he takes over manually on those chats or on those customer support inquiries, but most of the time basic things are done by the that jobs are already disrupted, and that market is disrupted, but that market also opened a new opportunities to be creating your own agents or things like that. That's a different story, different things, but in a creative field like design, it's for me it's like, it can be a great assistance. It can help in repetitive tasks. For example, if I recently was trying Claude Cowork, so and it recently launched that it can connect to Figma, and then what it can help you, that you create some components. Now what I can do is I ask Claude to create multiple states of that buttons, maybe disable, hover, or things like that. It did for me in 5 minutes, and it did a great job. And I was like, okay, so it does help me in repetitive tasks, but I have to give it certain instructions and my idea that what I did, and based on that idea you do the task. So it's helping me. It's not killing my job, and it's making me fast. So that's something I agree with you on that one as well. There's this a question in my mind that is something that most recognizable brands that are like Apple, Nike, they have almost like abstract, logos. They have the story behind it. So does the logo even matter, or is just placeholder for the story behind it? Because in those certain scenarios, it's very different what we use to create logo, because that's something very different and iconic as well, like just Nike or Apple. So what do you say about this? And I have one question as well, because that's for the audience, and that is, I should start with that. I got it later that we should start with what is branding actually. So that's the question first, and then there's the Nike one.
Well, branding is the idea that the customer has in their head about the product or service on offer. So it's much broader than what I specialize in, which is the visual identity. I know people call themselves brand designers, and I would refer to myself more as a visual identity designer, just because of how broad the brand is. The brand encompasses everything, whereas what I focus on is the visuals. So the logo, the typography, to some extent the copywriting, but I'm by no means an expert copywriter. And then the photographic style, brand patterns. So branding is huge to my specialism, which is in the visual side of things. And when you mentioned the simplicity of those logos, the Apple and the Nike, and the Shell and Target, do they matter? Yes, there's a lot of equity involved in those, where if you imagine a plain white T-shirt and you put the Nike tick on there, you've straight away you've added 1,000% onto what you can charge. But obviously that takes time. And one thing that the designer Sagi Haviv will often say to his clients at the start of a presentation is that it's never love at first sight. Mm-hmm. The Nike logo in particular, Phil Knight, the CEO at the time, he said he didn't really like it, but maybe it would grow on him. And it's a hugely valuable mark now. I couldn't put a figure on it, but I will always aim for that similar kind of simplicity in the work that I do, because it's the more simple a logo is, the longer it lasts, the more flexible it becomes in terms of reproduction at different sizes and embroidery and use as an icon. So that simplicity is always something to aim for, but you need to balance that with distinction, because you can't sell a circle or a square to every client. Mm-hmm. There needs to be distinction in the marketplace. You need to look at their competitors and make sure that they stand out But when it comes to the overall visual identity, if you think of colors, for example, clients don't always want to stand out. Sometimes they just want to fit in, and that's okay. If all your competitors are using some form of blue, then yeah, maybe you don't want to buck the trend. Maybe you just want to show yourself in a more professional light, where the focus might be on your typography and your photographs, your layout, your grid structure, and your marketing material. So it's not always about coming up with something that makes you think, wow, that's different. Sometimes it's just about elevating what's already there subtly. And when you have enough time in the profession, you can do that for your clients. It doesn't need to be a radical change. It can just be, yeah, I think I can improve this here and there, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to change this. It's working well. Something that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So when you started out, like in 2005, and you started the blog and things like that, and from there, back then it was not a strategy, because these days it's still like you have to create content, you have to create blogs and things like that. But back then it was not a thing, and you started your blog and you started working on that. So what was your thought behind it? Because that's not usually a traditional designer's path, because they learn something and they get a job. But you started a very unique thing at that point of time, that starting a blog, and then obviously getting featured on book and things like that. But what makes you start a blog? But I understand you just told earlier that you love the craft of working on it, and so what was going on at that point of it? I know that's old, very, but it's just question popping up in my mind.
Well, my first blog was on my personal domain, which was davidairey.com. That's where I had my design work. And I knew that I needed to flesh out my website in some way that boosted the search engine ranking. So I wanted to put some form of content on there. So I started writing about things that I enjoyed, but the topics were very broad. There would be architecture, there would be marketing, there would be creative resources, there would be music videos, there would be anything that I just liked the look of, or it appealed to me visually in some way. But the more work that I did, then the more I realized, okay, it's the logos that I enjoy the most. So it made sense to have that kind of spin-off blog, that logo-specific website. And it was really, at the start, to try and attract new clients. And then I soon realized that it was designers who were actually visiting, because comment threads were a lot more active back then, and a lot of the comments that I would get would be from other designers with their own blogs. So we would all comment on each other's blogs and link to each other, and it kind of elevated everybody at that stage. But then social media entered the mix in a much stronger way, and it kind of, the level of comments died down, and designers wrote a lot less, and it became much more short form. But there's a balance, because the shorter the writing gets on one hand, then people want something longer. So there's a flux there. There's always designers who are writing great content. That's where it started. It was really just a way to try and attract clients, but it soon became a way to help grow along with other designers, because they were the ones that were mostly visiting. So it was something that was unexpected, but great. Mm-hmm. So, what about you? How did you get started in brand design?
Yeah, so in early time, I used to watch in early 2010 that I used to watch few of the YouTube videos, because I was young, obviously. So I started watching Photoshop tutorials, and then how to edit pictures and things like that, and make, photo manipulation was in at that time, and Boss Logic was there, Piximperfect was there. It was just like a lot of things. I love editing pictures at that point. And then I saw through the tutorial, I got to know there is this field that you can design logos. You have the graphic design field. And then I saw one course on it, and I just thought, let's do this and let's see. And because from the whenever like from the childhood, like I love to draw things. Like not a good sketch artist, but it's just I like to draw. So I was not a very those kind of students that likes to, for example, I don't like to learn things in a traditional way. I would like to learn things in those I don't like. I want to do practical experiences in real life, that how that these things work. Like for example, if the physics I'm learning, how does that work in the reality? I don't get to the books. It's just something like that is my mind. And later on, it just grew into me that maybe I was not meant to be a scientific kind of into the field, and then be more of an artsy or design side of a person. And then from there, I got the course and I started learning Illustrator. At that point of time, I edited 2 videos for the song. And I was still in teenagers, and I got a gig at that point and doing a lot of stuff, creative stuff with the people, and do a lot of experimenting. Basically, at that point of time, you are energetic and you experiment a lot of things. I was editing videos, I was editing photos, and I was creating posters and posters for like concerts and things like that. So then that grew into me, like this is the field that I wanted to be in the design side rather than video editing side, because video editing is also I enjoy, but at that point of time I could not afford a PC of such degree, because it was expensive to get into the video editing side as well, because that's a very creative side as well. I love to make things creative in that side. And then later on I just picked most of my items, like let's do it design, and even though I love working with design, and I got introduced that maybe I can move towards websites, and I did a associate degree in software engineering as well, because to be honest, I'm a very kind of a person, that techie person, so I wanted to learn everything at that point when I was young. So I can code as well. I'm not a good coder because it's not a hands-on experience, but I know how the code works, how the front end work, how the back end work, how database work. But at the same time, there is the love for design. That's the part that I don't want to lose in my career. And this is why I keep carrying on and stepping on that career. I left the software engineering career at that point, and I was like, okay, this is something that I wanted to do, and I picked it in 2017. That this is what I want to do. I don't want to get disturbed, even though I was learning software engineering and things like that. But I chose that this is what I wanted to do. And to be honest, if I compare at that point, designers earn less than senior developers, and tech leads. But I chose money. I chose my craft over money, because I wanted to be in this, and I still make good money because of what I do is what I love, and people understand me. There are also a lot of designers in my circle who are not getting paid much, because they are in here for the money, and when you come for the money gets away from you. You just have to build relations, you have to love what you do and to understand what's going on around you. And this is why people come to me for design. A lot of work came to me, just like you said, come to me from reference, not from some website or some ads that I run. It just happens to be like that.
Yeah, so I think people can tell when you're in it for the money, and when you're in it for the craft, it shows in your work.
Yeah.
And it shows in the way you talk to the people. So, yeah, that resonates with me.
So, would you recommend any book to me that to read to be very interesting? Which doesn't have to be in design, but it's just something interesting.
I was chatting to Radim Malinich. He has a great podcast. He's a designer in England at the minute, and he asked me recently about a book that I would recommend, and it was It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be by Paul Arden. He was an ad man back in the day. And it's a short book. You can read it in an hour or two. But it's filled with great ideas. So it's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. Yeah, that's it there.
All right.
Are you familiar with it?
I have seen this book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small book, but it's great. Yeah, I'd recommend that to anybody. I've pulled it open on the page here. The person who doesn't make mistakes is unlikely to make anything. I've made mistakes all throughout my profession, my career. That's just part of being human, isn't it? You know, if you make a mistake in a project, you just apologize, own it, and move on and learn from it.
Yeah. And there's a key element to own it. That's something that I see in myself previously. I don't used to. Because when you are young and somebody critiques your work, you take it personal. And after you get some experience, you get the idea that there's this line, your work is not you. So when someone criticizes your work, this doesn't mean they're criticizing you. There's something wrong with it and you have to fix it. You made a mistake, but you have to fix it and you have to own it because you are the one who's dealing with it.
Yes, well said. Because our work is only one part of us. It's about building a relationship with your client. Ideally, you would want to sit down and have lunch with your client and get to know them personally, because the more you know about somebody, even if those small details aren't particularly related to their business, you can inject those details into their identity in some way that makes it more personal to them, and it makes it easier to sell an idea, and it makes it much more likely that they're going to love it for years to come. So meeting in person is the ideal, but most of my clients are overseas, and so it's more often than not it's video calls. But yeah, we're definitely more than our work. You know, I love graphic design. It's what I get paid to do, but like you know, we're much more than that.
Yeah. And definitely, I completely agree with you. And design is the middle part of everything. Like you can get a little bit of touch of maybe logos or projects. There's just a visual part of it, but there's other parts of that. You understand the psychology of the people, how they think, how your users think or your customers think. This is human behavior, human psychology, a lot of involved. Design is everywhere. You just have to look through that eye that this is how it's working, and this is the pattern that you see in certain people or in certain business owners or in certain business especially. So design is something very unique to me always, because it's like I love the work of Dieter Rams. Do you know him, right? So how he changed how appliances look and feel, and because back then people were not thinking about it, but he changed it. It's like Steve Jobs changed the whole smartphone market. It's an idea, it's a vision, and he caught it just like that. And I have Jonathan Ive, sorry. I love his work because the most of the finishes of product was done by him, and things. They are making things that are maybe not normal people would see that it could be better, but they thought that it could be better, and it could be very much appealing in terms of look, feel, how a certain people would feel. Like, for example, for a long time, Apple was, I feel like it's a premium brand. And even though right now Samsung costs same as much as the Apple iPhone costs, but still people prefer premium that Apple is. It's just it's the psychology that builds the brand and things like that. I love this idea of making people think a certain way just by putting their things on their hand, and just change the world's vision or dynamics. I don't know if I make my point clear.
Yes, I get that. When I started out, I was on a PC when I was first doing my design work. When I moved to a Mac, it seemed more intuitive. It was like stripping away elements that you didn't need, making things easier. Yeah. And that goes back in some way to the work of Dieter Rams that you mentioned there. When you look at what he designed, it was very pared back. It was minimal. It had no more than you needed to have on there. Mm-hmm. And because it looked like that, it made it more appealing. It made it more premium, in the same way that I think, Apple's products had that similar kind of visual appearance, where it's something that you would much rather have on your desk just because it looked nicer. It was more sleek, and when you used it, it was more intuitive. Things just seemed to work a bit easier. That was one of the biggest changes that I noticed with the Switch.
Yeah. That is very true. They made it like for normal user, for normal consumers, no extra things. I personally was a PC user. I recently bought Mac because of M chip, because of their efficiency and their intuitiveness. But obviously, that helps my workflow a lot. Overall, rather than when I was using a Windows laptop, there's no hate for the Windows. It has some pros in their scenarios, but when it comes to professional work, I mostly feel like MacBooks usually takes over Windows at any time because of their compatibility with the applications. For example, if I edit videos, DaVinci Resolve works very smooth on Mac rather than Windows. So it just thinks something Apple did it very well with integration and things like that. That's where the queue is. So, yeah. I think our time is up, and we are already 15 minutes up for that. So, thank you for joining, David. It was a very fun and informational and knowledgeable conversation. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your thoughts, taking your time out of your day.
Thank you for asking, man, Austin. It's a pleasure chatting with you. And it's 10:15 there, is it, at the minute?
Yeah.
It's 6:15 here in the evening. Yeah, so thanks for staying a little bit later for me. And
That's fine.
and it's great chatting with you.